Hello and welcome back to the Elite Formula Physio and Training Podcast. And we're well into summer break now. Hopefully everyone is relaxed and ready to get going again, because it's not a race week this week, but next week we'll be back. And what have you been up to, Matt? Oh, happy birthday, by the way. It was your birthday yesterday.
It was indeed, yeah. No, it's been fairly nice for some break, settling into 9 till 5 work, which is quite unusual, really. Yeah, so a bit less travel, which has been quite nice. We had a race weekend last weekend, so we just got back from. We were, God, my mind's gone blank already. We were racing. Where were we? We were Thruxton at the weekend. It was good weekend. Weather was good. Crazy racing.
And when you go to this many tracks, you kind of lose a little bit of where you've been and where you've been going and all of that jazz. But we were super lucky, because in our summer break, our main sport being motorsport, we obviously had the Olympics to absolutely feast on. And what a show they put on for us in Paris! What a show those Olympic athletes put on for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great to see. You almost don't forget, do you? But it's that watching it. It's such a great spectacle to kind of be able to kind of watch the athletes. You know, some of the guys we've not seen compete, or in sports that perhaps you don't follow. So to see, it's a really great eye opener. I absolutely loved some of the whitewater kayaking, excellent. Some of the speed climbing was amazing. Field and track was amazing as always. So yeah, it was great to see a lot of hard work for a lot of those athletes come together.
Yeah, the speed climbing was superb.
Yeah,
proper athletes getting up those walls. Absolutely rapid. It was a real spectacle to watch. And that whitewater raft. I mean, it can only be akin to like wacky races or something on the water, where they're bashing into each other, they're having to roll over the top. I mean, what sort of training has to go into that? It must be unbelievable.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, no, it was brilliant. And again, there was another few nice things which I thought really kind of brought home as well, which is the Olympics. Obviously, for some, it's a super successful, nothing better than winning a medal. But for a lot of athletes that have dedicated their lives to the last 4 years, obviously they come back with nothing. But I think there was some really lovely highlights of Adam Peaty. I think gave a great speech, and there was also, I'm trying to think of her name now, but she gave a great speech about one of the runners, which was this idea of, I think one of the things we try and teach a lot of our clients is this idea of falling in love with the journey and the process. And actually, it's great that you can go to the Olympics and the goal is, it's to win. And if you come home with a medal, it's obviously amazing. But actually, the reality is really we need to try and fall in love with that journey. Like how amazing you've been part of an Olympic team, and that discipline is like a real credit. Like fall in love with the person that you become on the journey rather than that end destination.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I've always been someone that has always arrived wanting to win, but even just being at the Olympics, you've won already. You are the best in the world. You've qualified for the Olympics. So, there's hundreds and thousands of other people that would want to be in your place. So you've already had to go through the qualification processes. You already had to compete and place or win a world championship or European championship, and you're already one of the best in the world. And then you're taking on the best in the world, and that's why we get such a spectacle. But you're right. You think of and I've got a couple of friends involved with the South Sudan basketball team. Now, South Sudan, they're a war-torn country, and they're the first African nation to go to the Olympics and compete in basketball. And they haven't even got an indoor basketball court in South Sudan. These guys were playing without any shoes 4 years ago, and now they're competing in the Olympics. And sport provides such a bigger driver than just sport itself, and gives people hope and life. And I think that's what I was trying to allude to in our sort of little Monday motivation we do every week on Instagram, that it might not be the Olympics that you're going for, but you can achieve what you want to achieve if you just go through that process and do the right things and be consistent and stick to it. It's not out of reach.
No,
even though most people in the UK think they could compete in the Olympics in 4 years' time if they start training now. Did you see that?
I saw that. That's ridiculous, isn't it? There was also a really great quote. There's a Jimmy Carr interview with on the diary of his CEO, and he talks about this idea of, if you look at like satisfaction from training, and it's this idea of like, does a six-pack make you happy? And this idea of like, we all might go to the gym because we want to be a stone lighter, or we want to have the abs, or we want to be photo ready. But actually, what you really fall in love with is the person who's made the sacrifices, who's gone to gym before work. That's the person that you fall in love with. It's almost the person on the journey rather than necessarily that end goal. And sometimes it's lovely to say to come away with the end goal, but really you've got to fall in love. It's the person that you become on that journey that you should. That's where the satisfaction is going to come from. And I think we see that in the most successful athletes. Your Tiger Woods, your Maxes. What's the difference? It's they love the journey. They love doing what they do, and the end goal is kind of the icing on the cake for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Like, obviously, being F1 world champion is a dream, and it's the lifelong ambition that was built towards. But and we celebrated hard after many of those championships. But I've also seen that the same happiness and joy and celebration from winning a track in another car or in virtual racing as well. It brings that same joy, and it's all about the process of setting up a car, working through everything you need to work through to get to the point of racing and then winning. So yeah, no, that's good. And I think that leads us nicely into actually, Matt, because I know you're going to talk later, and we've talked a little bit about it before, but you're talking all about kind of habits and building those winning habits, and that kind of sums into that, doesn't it? Because anybody can, lose weight, get fit, get a six pack, but to do that, they need to have consistency, which comes with habits, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think for me, you're right. We, as coaches, will get different things or different goals that people will come to us with. It might be that they want a 12-week goal or a 6-week goal, but really, I guess the behind the scenes secret of what we're really trying to create with individuals is like getting them to love and enjoy and make habits of the things that they're doing. So actually, their 6-week goal really becomes a lifestyle change, because that's really what's going to keep that where it is. So yeah, tonight we're doing a bit of a talk on kind of winning habits and routines. And I think for me, I try and talk to any athlete or person that we work with around creating these kind of winning routines. I think we've got a lot of data and science now, which kind of would hint towards, there's certain things that we know work or optimize you. So I think it's really important that you have work with someone that understands that data and what does work. But at the same time, I think building a winning routine is being able to understand the data and the information we have, but then make it bespoke and into a routine that works into your schedule, routine, your sport, etc. And I think that's the art, because it's very easy to copy others and their routine that's based, yes, on data, but it doesn't mean that's going to work for you. The interpretation of it is the clever bit. I always like to think of it a bit like making a recipe. There are certain ingredients that you need to get roughly right to make that recipe work and taste good, but you're going to have your own little adjustments that you're going to need to make it right for you.
So what would you advise someone starting out? They want to build some good habits in terms of just getting into exercise. I think that was like person one, and then maybe person two who's on the edge of breaking into sport and really wanting to take it to the next level.
I think I would do a very small little SWOT analysis. I think I would lean into kind of, if you're just getting into sport, I think, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your threats? And what are the kind of opportunities that we've got available to us? So I think when it comes to your strengths, I think lean into them. If you know that you're good at certain things, play on those things, whether that's your time management, whether that's your some equipment that you've got, whatever it might be, I think lean into those strengths. I think being able to highlight your weaknesses is really important, and finding a manageable strategy to kind of focus on those weaknesses, whether that's working with a coach or not ignoring those weaknesses, is really, really key. I think understanding threats and barriers is really key as well if you're getting into sport. I think the biggest thing we see with anyone who's new to a sport is that they fall off the cliff very quickly. It's all very new and exciting, and for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks, know that they generally can have the risk of falling off a cliff a little bit. So I think spotting, where your threats or barriers, the things that might knock you off. If you go, do you know what? I know that work gets busy. Well, how can we come up with a plan for when that situation does occur? And then I think finally, it's really looking at the opportunities or things or goals that we might do to kind of maximize that, whether that's goal setting or certain things we've got available to us. But that would probably be my advice to someone who's new to sport is, well, what can we do to make sure we're preempting where you're going to be good, where you're going to be bad, and what might get in the way, so we can at least build something or a routine for them that's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's those things that get in the way, especially if, me, you, or people that just want to keep fit and keep exercising. And work does get busy, or life does get busy, and we don't have all the time in the world like athletes might do, and so on and so forth. And I always used to love it from James Clear's book in Atomic Habits, and they use this example a lot. I probably said it on the podcast before, but where he talks about even if you've run out of time and you've got no time for a gym session, and your gym time is after work, leave work, go to the gym, park in the car park, and then drive home again, because it's the habit of going and getting there. And okay, every time you get in your car after work, you go to the gym. It's automatic. It's not, oh, I drive home or I missed a turn or whatever. And then even if you've got 10 minutes, you park up and you go in the gym. Even if you grab a coffee and then leave, you've still gone to the gym, and you're starting to make that habit. And if you do that consistently, after time, it will be automatic that is where you go after work, and the rest of it will just kind of...
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, and I don't think that recipe changes much even into the elite athlete, in the sense of, a lot of people go, well, does it look very different to us working with a F1 world champion or an Olympic athlete versus someone who's new to sport? And the recipe is kind of the same. It's just we might do it on a different level. They've already got the habit of going to the gym, but we might be looking for their strengths and weaknesses. Where can they find the 1% that they need in order to find them? And it's the same thing. What are the threats and barriers that they've got in the way of them kind of getting more from what they're doing trading wise and getting the quality from their sessions? There's just a few more intricacies there that we might need to look at, where we need to work a little bit closer with coaches, or the physio and medical teams, or understand their home life from the psychologist. There's just a few more intricacies there, but it really is the same when we look at someone who's new to sport. We just might be grabbing a few more of those low-hanging fruits when we have that same analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about like habits, like before games, like pre-match or pre-race, or what sort of advice do you give on that?
Yeah, I think habits before games and pre-races is murky water. I think you've got the one side of the habits pre-race, pre-competition, where we've got really good evidence and data to support what we might be doing. So, for example, if we're talking about a hot environment before sport, we've got very clear data about the protocols that would work in a pre-race routine or habit before those, in terms of hydration, pre-cooling strategies. So I think there are certain things where we need to be really clear about the data, and making sure athletes, new or old to sport, understand the data behind what is best for optimizing you for performance. I think the slightly murkier side of the water in terms of pre-habits and routines is stuff that we haven't got data to support is any good for injury prevention or even performance, but psychologically it has a good impact. So we might say to someone that stretching, the classic age-old debate that comes up, should I be stretching before sport? Well, in some scenarios we see it may show slight impacts, but as a whole we're not really sure. But for some athletes, we know that it's been ingrained from a young age that they have a bit of an ability or a stretching routine before sport, and for them that helps to switch on that readiness, and that it kicks off all the right stuff that we want from a psychological point of view to get them ready to perform. And if that's the case, that is fine. So I think they're probably the two elements for me when I look at a pre-sport routine. Is that I'd probably say my non-negotiable is the evidence-based stuff. We can't miss that. We know we've got really clear data. If we want to sprinkle on some murkier stuff that they like in their routine, or helps them into a good headspace, or has some benefits which we think there might not be data for, but at the same time it works for them, then that's also fine. And it's just something I think as a team, if we can facilitate it, we have the time and the facilities to do it, we can come up with a strategy. And that's again about making the recipe work for you.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you approach? So one big question I always do. So when I'm building these habits, let's say, or routines with athletes, drivers, I like to keep things very flexible. So it's more like philosophies rather than this is what you're going to do. And he's sort of non-negotiables there. But what if you're in an environment where you just can't do it? So it's listed as a non-negotiable, but you haven't got the kit, you haven't got the equipment, or you haven't got the time, or something gets in the way of it. Because I've seen athletes crumble when they haven't been able to, tie their laces in the, in the way that they want to tie. You get my point there. So how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you're absolutely right. Like, we've seen it 1,000 times over. We have a strategy or a routine, or we have you're right, these philosophies, as we say, in terms of what you want to build for an athlete. So in those scenarios, I think it's about doing the best we can with what we have available. We know sport is a fluid process, and actually, for me, it's go for what you can get the biggest bang for buck in what facility or time or equipment you have available to you. And I think also it's then just you're absolutely right, is focus on what you can control. So you're right, that philosophy for us of going, well, actually a lot of what we've done away from the sporting environment, for me, should have built the foundation for whatever we do when it comes to the track or whatever sporting environment we might be in. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's building a philosophy where somebody might not have the optimal habit or routine before, but that's fine if you've done the prep and they're generally doing it. So you're right, it's definitely about flexibility, taking those low-hanging fruit. If they understand the data, and I think if they understand or have a broad understanding of what we're trying to achieve, we can normally adjust or make changes in some form or other. It may not be as good as what we're trying to achieve, but it's a start. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You do have to watch that we don't get fixed on one thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's about having options, isn't it? It's about being flexible and also about planning ahead as well. We're lucky that we know what tracks we're going to, we know the facilities we have there, we know how it's all going to roll during a weekend. But chaos can still hit sometimes. We can get stuck in traffic or all sorts and have to do things on the fly. So keeping calm and working to philosophies and processes is a good way. So good, excellent. And I know we're on time, but just to finish off, because you did mention sort of ice baths and cool pools for those hot races, but I've been enjoying the debate that's been flying around everywhere on the new bits of research that have come out recently on cold water immersion, when to use it, ice baths, and all of this.
Oh, that's a big question to finish on, Brad. It was interesting. There was a paper as well, wasn't there, about all this? They were talking about even this idea of hot water immersion and some of the benefits there as well. What's my
So basically, the study that just came out was that hot water. So it was 41 degrees. Hot water was better than cold water and warm water in recovery, maintaining power, and maintaining muscle endurance. So yeah, everyone jumping into cold water, just let that.
I know. It's funny, isn't it? I think it's it's another one of these murky waters, isn't it? I think it is. Look, I think.
Excuse the pun.
Yeah, exactly. It's. I think we know that there's very clear data on the pre-cooling stuff, so we know that I think that sort of ice bath, cool bath, great for that. I think when it comes to recovery, it's also seems to be clear that if you're someone who is a strength-based athlete or you're trying to improve strength and you're doing ice baths immediately afterwards, we seem to see that's inhibiting some of the benefits that we're looking to kind of achieve. So straight after, I think you summarised it really nicely this week around this idea that there's also probably a psychological element. We are seeing this idea that some athletes get into it and they feel great afterwards. So if that means that your athlete, for whatever reason, even if we don't quite understand the science behind it, that it's not harmful, but we're seeing that they feel readier the next day to go again and adhere to your training goals or push harder, then that is a positive. So we have to roll with that. But I think you're absolutely right. I think all we can really do in this space is stay on top of the evidence, keep an eye on it, and understand the philosophy of what it does. But at the same time, like all these adjuncts, they're never going to work miracles. Go back to the basics of recovery, which is we get caught up in an ice bath really is probably going to be a small percentage of your recovery or performance. You need to make sure your training program's right, you're eating well, and you're sleeping well.
Yeah, that is a super good point to end on it. No matter what the evidence says about an ice bath, it's still only going to be a small part of our recovery. It's not the be or end all. You've got to get those big rocks right: the sleep, the nutrition, the hydration, the training program, etc. That's a really good point. And yeah, I think when we mention evidence about cold water, immersion, ice baths, etc. We have to also remember, so evidence is, yes, the research and what the science tells us, but it's also the context and the environment as well. So remembering that context of, if and the biggest evidence on cold water immersion is subjective. It is how it makes a person feel after, if they feel like they've recovered or if they feel like they haven't. So if you hate ice baths and you feel recovered after a warm bath, that is okay as well, because we know that physiologically it's not doing anything in the other direction. But yeah, read my latest Instagram post for a good update on do whatever you like. But cool. So enjoy the rest.
Fairly chilled weekend actually. Yeah, which is quite nice. So we're working, training. It's my last big volume week before sort of a 2 week and a half taper before the Ironman. So yeah, 2 weeks on Sunday. So last big training week. It's coming around fast. No birthday beers this year, so that's a shame. But delayed birthday party is on the cards in September. So it's no beers before that.
Love that. That's great. And I'm off to actually catch up today with Mike Mancius, author of the Game Plan, but also performance coach to LeBron James. So to hear all about what they did at the Olympics to win that gold medal this year, and maybe talk a little bit about Steph Curry's shooting performance in the semi and the final. So I am looking forward to that. I am going to run to that now. So thank you everyone for listening. If you liked it, like it, subscribe, the usual stuff, and we'll be back for the return of motorsport.